You think Thanksgiving dinner has always been about roast goose, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie? Think again. These aren't vintage cookbook myths. They're real old-fashioned Thanksgiving recipes, traditional holiday dishes, and retro Thanksgiving treats served across America from the 1880s through the 1960s that have completely vanished from modern tables. Roast goose. Before turkey monopolized Thanksgiving, roast goose ruled America's holiday tables like edible royalty. Throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, European immigrants, especially Germans, Scandinavians, and British families, brought goose roasting traditions across the Atlantic, making it the preferred centerpiece for special occasions. Geese thrived in small farmyards, requiring less space than turkeys while producing incredibly rich, fatty meat that self-basted during roasting. The preparation was a day-long affair. Cooks cleaned the goose thoroughly, pricked the skin all over with a fork to release abundant fat, then stuffed the cavity with apples, onions, and sage. The bird roasted for 3 to 4 hours at moderate heat, periodically basted with golden drippings. That rendered goose fat was liquid gold, carefully saved for frying potatoes and preserving foods throughout winter. The crispy mahogany skin crackled under the knife, revealing tender, dark meat with gamey richness turkey could never match. Roast goose meant prosperity in immigrant communities. Serving goose announced your family had made it in America while maintaining old-world traditions. Pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie wasn't always the undisputed Thanksgiving dessert champion. It fought its way to dominance over decades of competing traditions. Early American colonists made pumpkin custards by hollowing out pumpkins, filling them with milk, honey, and spices, then baking the whole thing in ashes. By the 1800s, the modern pie version emerged as pumpkin puree baked in pastry crusts became standard. Commercial canned pumpkin, introduced by Libby's in 1929, transformed occasional homemade treat into ubiquitous national tradition. Making pumpkin pie from scratch required serious labor. Pie pumpkins, smaller and sweeter than jack-o'-lantern varieties, were roasted whole until soft, then the flesh scraped out and mashed smooth. This puree mixed with eggs, cream or evaporated milk, brown sugar, cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and cloves created spiced custard that poured into unbaked pie shells. Baking at moderate heat set the filling into silky, wobbly perfection that firmed as it cooled. Tomato aspic. Picture a shimmering, translucent red tower wobbling on your grandmother's best china. That's tomato aspic, the showstopper of mid-century Thanksgiving tables. From the 1920s through 1960s, this savory gelatin creation represented culinary sophistication and modern homemaking prowess. Commercial gelatin products, like Knox, transformed gelatin from a luxury requiring hours of boiling calves' hooves into a convenient pantry staple. Making tomato aspic required precision. Cooks dissolved unflavored gelatin in tomato juice seasoned with celery salt, Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, and horseradish. The mixture poured into elaborate ring molds, often embedding celery pieces, olives, or cream cheese balls inside. After chilling overnight, the aspic was unmolded onto lettuce leaves with a dramatic wobble, crowned with mayonnaise rosettes. This dish signaled refinement and domestic achievement. Serving aspic proved you owned proper molds, had refrigerator space, and possessed patience for fussy recipes. The texture was simultaneously firm and yielding, with bright tomato flavor cut by tangy seasonings. Jellied turkey vegetable salad. Nothing says vintage Thanksgiving quite like leftover turkey suspended in quivering gelatin alongside diced vegetables. This ingenious dish from the 1940s and 1950s solved the post-Thanksgiving problem: what to do with mountains of leftover turkey. During the Depression and World War II rationing years, wasting food was sinful, so creative homemakers transformed scraps into glamorous salads that stretched precious meat further. The construction was methodical. Gelatin dissolved in turkey broth formed the base, seasoned with salt, pepper, and tarragon. As it began setting, cooks folded in diced turkey, celery, peas, carrots, and sometimes pickle relish or chopped hard-boiled eggs. The mixture went into ring molds or loaf pans, chilled until firm, then unmolded onto iceberg lettuce beds with mayonnaise dollops. Jellied turkey salad demonstrated frugal elegance and kitchen efficiency. It transformed humble leftovers into company-worthy fare prepared a day ahead, crucial when Thanksgiving stretched into weekends of visiting relatives. Cornish game hens with rice stuffing. When turkeys grew too massive for smaller modern families, Cornish game hens strutted onto 1960s and 1970s Thanksgiving tables as elegant individual portions. These diminutive birds, actually young chickens, not game birds, were commercially developed in the 1950s by Connecticut farmers. They offered ceremonial appeal of whole roasted poultry without wasteful leftovers, perfectly matching suburban nuclear family dining. Preparation felt fancy, yet manageable. Each hen was stuffed with herbed rice pilaf mixed with mushrooms, almonds, and sometimes raisins or dried apricots. The cavities were trussed closed, birds brushed with melted butter and sprinkled with paprika, then roasted at high heat until skin crisped to golden perfection. Cooking time was just 45 minutes, revolutionary compared to turkey's hours-long roasting. Serving individual hens to each diner created restaurant-quality presentation at home. Every guest got their own bird to carve, complete with crispy skin and personal stuffing portion. The meat was tender, mild, and predictably cooked. Perfection salad. Perfection salad arrived on Thanksgiving tables with the confidence of its ambitious name, representing the pinnacle of turn-of-the-century gelatin artistry. Created around 1905 and winning third prize in a Knox Gelatin recipe contest, this shredded cabbage and celery combination, suspended in lemon gelatin, became a holiday staple through the 1950s. It embodied progressive-era ideals of scientific cooking and domestic efficiency. Making perfection salad required patient layering. Lemon-flavored gelatin dissolved in boiling water, mixed with vinegar and salt, created a tart, savory base. As it cooled to syrupy consistency, cooks folded in finely shredded cabbage, diced celery, minced pimento for color, and sometimes grated carrot. The mixture poured into decorative molds, chilled until firm, then unmolded onto serving plates with mayonnaise. This dish demonstrated culinary progress and modern sophistication. The name promised flawlessness, a scientifically balanced salad that combined vegetables, acid, and gelatin in ideal proportions. Though strange by today's standards, it offered refreshing crunch against heavy Thanksgiving fare. Christmas plum pudding. Despite its name suggesting Christmas exclusively, plum pudding appeared at Thanksgiving tables throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, representing British colonial culinary heritage. This dense, dark steamed pudding contained no plums at all. The name came from Old English, where plums meant raisins and dried fruits. Making it was a marathon event requiring weeks of preparation and hours of steaming. The process began in early November. Cooks mixed suet, breadcrumbs, flour, brown sugar, and molasses with dried currants, raisins, candied citrus peel, and warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice. Eggs and dark beer bound everything together into a thick batter. The mixture packed into greased pudding molds or cloth bags, then steamed for 6 to 8 hours until firm and intensely flavored. Some families prepared pudding months ahead, storing it to mellow and develop complexity. Serving was theatrical. The pudding was unmolded, doused with brandy, and set aflame at the table, arriving in blue flames. Hard sauce made from butter, sugar, and more brandy accompanied each slice. This rich, boozy dessert symbolized abundance and celebration. Pineapple cheese salad. Pineapple cheese salad epitomized the 1950s obsession with combining sweet fruits and savory dairy in wobbly gelatin matrices. This bizarre creation suspended crushed pineapple and shredded cheddar cheese in lime or lemon jello, creating flavor combinations that baffle modern palates. The dish represented post-war prosperity when exotic canned fruits and convenient gelatin mixes made homemakers feel cosmopolitan and modern. Preparation was deceptively simple. Lime jello dissolved in boiling water, then mixed with pineapple juice from canned crushed pineapple. As it cooled, cook stirred in the drained pineapple and finely shredded sharp cheddar cheese, usually about a cup of cheese to one small can of pineapple. Some versions added chopped celery or nuts for texture. The mixture chilled in ring molds overnight, then unmolded onto lettuce with mayonnaise. This salad confused taste categories entirely. Was it appetizer, side dish, or dessert? The tangy lime clashed with sharp cheese, while sweet pineapple tried mediating. Texturally, it offered bizarre contrasts: springy gelatin, crispy cheese shreds, and soft pineapple chunks. Despite its strangeness, it was wildly popular at potlucks and holiday dinners throughout the Eisenhower era. Celery Victor. Celery Victor arrived from San Francisco's finest restaurants onto ambitious home Thanksgiving tables in the early 1900s. Created at the St. Francis Hotel around 1910 and named for chef Victor Hertzler, this elegant appetizer transformed humble celery into refined first-course fare. It represented the era's fascination with French-inspired cuisine and sophisticated presentation that elevated simple ingredients through technique and presentation. Making Celery Victor required careful attention. Celery hearts were trimmed to uniform lengths, simmered gently in seasoned chicken or beef stock until just tender but still crisp, then chilled completely. The cooked celery arranged artfully on plates, draped with anchovy fillets in crosshatch patterns and dressed with sharp vinaigrette made from olive oil, vinegar, mustard, and fresh herbs. Some versions added hard-boiled egg quarters and pimento strips for color. This dish announced culinary ambition and continental sophistication. Serving Celery Victor proved you dined at fine establishments and could recreate restaurant elegance at home. The celery absorbed savory stock flavors while maintaining its characteristic crunch, complemented by briny anchovies and tangy dressing. Though labor-intensive for such a simple vegetable, it provided a light, palate-cleansing start to heavy Thanksgiving feasts. Oyster stuffing. Long before boxed stuffing mixes, oyster stuffing represented coastal Thanksgiving luxury and maritime tradition. From colonial times through the mid-1900s, oysters were abundant, affordable, and deeply connected to American holiday celebrations, particularly in mid-Atlantic and southern states. Chesapeake Bay oysters flooded markets each November, making them a natural Thanksgiving addition when combined with cornbread or white bread stuffing. The preparation married land and sea. Cooks made traditional bread stuffing with sautéed onions, celery, butter, and herbs like sage and thyme, then folded in fresh shucked oysters with their liquor just before stuffing the turkey. The oyster's briny juice moistened the bread while the mollusks themselves cooked inside the bird, becoming tender and infusing the stuffing with oceanic flavor. Some families made it as a side dish casserole rather than cavity stuffing. Oyster stuffing signaled prosperity and regional pride. Coastal families considered Thanksgiving incomplete without it, while inland communities viewed it as exotic luxury. The oysters added silky texture and mineral complexity that elevated ordinary stuffing into something special. As oyster prices climbed and supplies dwindled, this once common tradition became an expensive rarity few modern families maintain. Mock apple pie. Mock apple pie stands as the most audacious culinary deception in American baking history. A pie that tastes remarkably like apple pie but contains 0 apples. Created during the 1930s Depression when apples were expensive or unavailable, then revived during World War II rationing, this ingenious dessert used Ritz crackers as apple substitutes. The recipe appeared on Ritz cracker boxes, becoming a phenomenon of creative scarcity cooking. The magic lay in chemistry and seasoning. Crushed Ritz crackers soaked in a syrup made from water, sugar, cream of tartar, and lemon juice, mimicking apple texture and tartness. Cinnamon and nutmeg added familiar pie spice flavors, while butter enriched the filling. The mixture went into a double-crust pie shell and baked until golden. The crackers softened into something uncannily similar to cooked apple slices in texture, if not quite taste. Mock apple pie represented American ingenuity and make-do spirit during hard times. Families could serve apple pie for Thanksgiving without expensive fresh fruit, maintaining holiday traditions despite economic constraints. The result fooled some diners and amused others, but it kept pie on the table when real apples weren't possible. Creamed onions in pastry. Creamed onions in pastry shells elevated the humble onion to Thanksgiving side dish stardom throughout the mid-1900s. This dish transformed tiny pearl onions, laborious to peel but sweet when cooked, into elegant individual servings that looked restaurant fancy while tasting comfortingly homey. It represented the era's love for cream sauces, individual portions, and food served in edible containers. Preparation tested patience and rewarded persistence. Cooks blanched pearl onions briefly, then painstakingly peeled each one, a task often delegated to children or gathered family members. The onions simmered in milk until tender, then were folded into thick bechamel sauce, enriched with butter, seasoned with white pepper and nutmeg. Meanwhile, pastry shells baked until crisp and golden. Just before serving, the creamed onions spooned into shells and sometimes topped with breadcrumbs or paprika. This dish offered textural and visual appeal. Crispy pastry contrasted with creamy, sweet onions and velvety sauce. Individual servings felt special and controlled portions elegantly. The sweet, mild onions in rich sauce provided comfort food sophistication. Though time-consuming, it demonstrated the cook's dedication to presentation and the willingness to tackle fiddly recipes for holiday guests. Mincemeat pie. Mincemeat pie carries dark, boozy complexity that once defined American Thanksgiving desserts before pumpkin pie's dominance. Traditional mincemeat contained actual minced meat, usually beef or venison, mixed with dried fruits, sweet, spices, and copious amounts of brandy or rum. This medieval preservation method created intensely flavored filling that aged for months, developing deeper character over time. By the 1800s, it was a Thanksgiving essential across America. Making authentic mincemeat was a fall ritual. Cooks simmered chopped cooked beef, beef suet, apples, raisins, currants, and candied citrus peel with brown sugar, molasses, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and allspice. Generous splashes of brandy and cider preserved everything while adding boozy warmth. The mixture aged in crocks for weeks or months, periodically stirred and refreshed with more liquor. Come Thanksgiving, it filled double-crust pies that baked until bubbly and fragrant. Mincemeat pie tasted of history, spice trade, and celebration. The meat added savory depth that balanced sweet dried fruit, while alcohol provided warming complexity. Each bite combined chewy, sticky fruit with aromatic spices and that mysterious, meaty undertone. Modern palates often reject meat in dessert, and vegetarian mincemeat versions lack traditional character completely. Mock plum pudding. When authentic plum pudding's elaborate preparation proved too daunting, mock plum pudding offered a shortcut to holiday tradition. This Depression era and wartime adaptation captured plum pudding's essence: dark, spiced, dense sweetness, without requiring sous-vide, lengthy steaming, or months of aging. It allowed families to maintain British culinary heritage and holiday customs despite limited time, money, or ingredients. The simplified process used readily available ingredients. Cooks mixed flour, brown sugar, baking soda, and warm spices with molasses or dark corn syrup, creating dark batter similar to gingerbread. Raisins, chopped dates, and sometimes nuts added fruit and texture that genuine plum pudding provided. Instead of steaming for hours, mock versions baked in regular ovens like cake, finishing in under an hour. Some recipes added strong coffee or a tablespoon of vinegar for complexity. Mock plum pudding delivered satisfying results without intimidating commitment. It provided the expected dark color, sweet spiciness, and dried fruit chewiness that holiday traditions demanded. Served warm with hard sauce or custard, it evoked authentic pudding memories while requiring minimal skill or equipment. Though purists scorned it as inadequate imitation, practical cooks appreciated achieving holiday spirit without marathon cooking sessions. Prune sour cream pie. Prune sour cream pie sounds unappetizing to modern ears, but this Depression-era creation was a Thanksgiving staple when prunes were affordable, nutritious, and valued rather than joke-worthy. Dried plums were kitchen staples throughout the early 1900s, prized for keeping well, providing natural sweetness without much sugar, and delivering reliable nutrition during lean times. Combined with tangy sour cream, they created surprisingly sophisticated pie filling. Making this pie required simple technique. Pitted prunes simmered until soft, then were pureed or chopped finely. The prunes mixed with sour cream, eggs, sugar, and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, creating a smooth, custard-like filling similar to pumpkin pie in texture. This mixture poured into a single pie crust and baked until just set, with slight wobble in the center. Some versions added lemon zest for brightness or raisins for extra texture. The result was rich, tangy sweet, and deeply flavored. Sour cream provided dairy richness and pleasant tang that balanced prune's concentrated sweetness. The texture was creamy and smooth, almost pudding-like. Though Prune's reputation declined dramatically, relegated to geriatric jokes and digestive remedies, this pie represented resourceful baking when every ingredient mattered and nothing was wasted. Indian pudding. Indian pudding carries American history in every spoonful, connecting colonial Thanksgiving tables to indigenous corn cultivation. This Native American-inspired dessert became a New England Thanksgiving tradition by the 1700s when colonists adapted English hasty pudding recipes using cornmeal instead of wheat flour. Indian referred to cornmeal, the grain indigenous peoples taught colonists to grow and grind, making it one of America's oldest continuously made desserts. The slow cooking method created deep flavor. Cornmeal cooked in milk until thick, then mixed with molasses, butter, eggs, ginger, cinnamon, and sometimes raisins. The mixture poured into a buttered baking dish and baked low and slow, sometimes 3 to 4 hours, until the pudding darkened, concentrated, and developed a distinctive texture, creamy inside with slightly crusty edges. Some cooks added a cup of cold milk halfway through baking, creating mysterious layers. Indian pudding tasted of molasses, warm spices, and corn's natural sweetness. It was simultaneously rustic and comforting, connecting diners to colonial heritage and indigenous agricultural gifts. Served warm with vanilla ice cream or heavy cream, it provided satisfying density after lighter holiday fare. Though beloved in New England through the mid-1900s, it rarely appears on modern Thanksgiving tables outside historical recreations. Peas in white sauce. Peas in white sauce sounds criminally boring today, but this simple side dish represented modern convenience and year-round vegetable availability that previous generations could barely imagine. From the 1920s through the 1960s, canned or frozen peas and cream sauce appeared at virtually every Thanksgiving dinner, offering bright green color and mild flavor that balanced richer dishes. It was the safe, non-controversial vegetable every family member would eat. Preparation was deliberately simple. Frozen or canned peas were heated gently to avoid mushiness, then folded into basic white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. Some cooks added a pinch of sugar to emphasize peas' natural sweetness, or white pepper and nutmeg for subtle spice. The mixture was kept just warm enough to serve, never boiled, to maintain the peas' shape and bright color. Fancier versions added pearl onions or mushrooms. This dish represented post-war domesticity and food industry convenience. Opening a can or bag meant having perfect vegetables instantly. No shelling, no seasonality concerns, no waste. The mild cream sauce made vegetables palatable for children and added richness without overwhelming. Though nutritionally sound and visually appealing, peas in white sauce became synonymous with bland cafeteria food, eventually disappearing as fresh, simply prepared vegetables regained favor. Savory gelatin salad. Savory gelatin salads dominated. Thanksgiving side dish spreads from the 1920s through 1970s, representing the apex of molded food obsession. These shimmering creations suspended vegetables, meats, or seafood in flavored gelatin, creating edible sculptures that wobbled spectacularly. Lime jello with cabbage and carrots, lemon gelatin with tuna and celery, or tomato aspic with horseradish. The variations were endless and often bewildering. The construction process was ritualistic. Gelatin dissolved in boiling water or stock, flavored with salt, vinegar, or lemon juice for savory profiles. As it cooled to syrupy thickness, carefully diced ingredients were suspended throughout, everything from shredded carrots and celery to cottage cheese, olives, or canned vegetables. The mixture poured into elaborate molds and refrigerated overnight. Unmolding required nerve-wracking precision, briefly dipping the mold in warm water and inverting onto serving plates while praying nothing broke. These salads announced domestic sophistication and modern kitchen technology. They required refrigeration, still relatively new in many homes, and specialized equipment like decorative molds. The colors were intensely bright, the textures unnaturally uniform, and the flavor combinations often challenged logic. Today, they seem bizarre, but they represented cutting-edge entertaining for decades of American hostesses. Molasses baked beans with ham hock. Molasses baked beans with ham hock brought New England heritage and hearty sustenance to Thanksgiving tables long before green bean casserole existed. This dish traces directly to colonial times when beans, molasses, and salt pork were storage staples that sustained families through harsh winters. Saturday night baking traditions carried into Thanksgiving celebrations, especially in northern states where beans represented regional pride and practical cooking wisdom. The preparation required patience and planning. Dried navy or pea beans soaked overnight, then simmered with a ham hock or salt pork until barely tender. The beans drained and transferred to earthenware bean pots with fresh ham hock, molasses, brown sugar, dry mustard, and sometimes onion. A small amount of cooking liquid was added, then the pot went into a low oven for 6 to 8 hours, occasionally checked and liquid replenished. The long cooking melted collagen from the ham hock into silky gelatin, while beans absorbed sweet, smoky flavors. The result was dark, thick, intensely flavored beans with meltingly tender pork. Molasses provided deep sweetness, balanced by mustard's sharpness and pork's salty richness. This was fuel food, calorie-dense, protein-rich, and satisfying. Though heavy for modern Thanksgiving preferences, it connected diners to American culinary roots and pioneer resourcefulness. Fruit charlotte. Fruit Charlotte arrived at Thanksgiving tables, wearing European elegance adapted for American ingredients. This molded dessert used ladyfinger cookies or sliced pound cake to line a mold filled with fruit-laden custard or Bavarian cream, then chilled until firm. Popular from the late 1800s through the 1950s, it represented refined continental dessert, making that ambitious American homemakers embraced for special occasions. Creating Charlotte required architectural precision. Ladyfingers were trimmed and arranged upright around the sides of a Charlotte mold or springform pan, often brushed with fruit liqueur. The filling, usually apple, apricot, or mixed berry puree, folded into custard or whipped cream, poured carefully inside. More ladyfingers topped the filling, then the whole construction chilled for hours or overnight. Unmolding revealed a striking cylindrical cake with fruit filling visible between cookie layers. Serving Charlotte announced European culinary knowledge and dessert sophistication. The contrast between crisp, delicate cookies and creamy, fruity filling provided textural interest while looking impressively professional. Though time-consuming and requiring specific equipment, Charlotte offered make-ahead convenience perfect for busy holiday preparation. As simpler desserts gained favor and European baking techniques seemed overly fussy, Charlotte vanished from most American Thanksgiving celebrations. Ambrosia salad. Ambrosia salad carried its heavenly name onto Southern Thanksgiving tables with unshakable confidence, combining exotic tropical fruits with coconut and marshmallows into sugary, creamy clouds. Originating in the South during the late 1800s when citrus and coconut were expensive luxuries, it evolved from elegant citrus sections with fresh coconut into the marshmallow-studded concoction familiar by the 1950s. Despite questionable ingredients, it remains a nostalgic favorite in many families. The classic preparation mixed canned mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, maraschino cherries, miniature marshmallows, and sweetened shredded coconut with sour cream or Cool Whip. Some versions added chopped pecans for crunch or bananas for extra sweetness. Everything folded together gently, then chilled overnight to let flavors meld and marshmallows soften slightly. The result was startlingly sweet, impossibly colorful, and texturally chaotic. Chewy coconut, squishy marshmallows, juicy fruit, and creamy binder. Ambrosia represented Southern hospitality and celebration. The name Ambrosia, food of the gods, wasn't ironic to people who remembered when fresh citrus was a Christmas luxury, and coconut was genuinely exotic. Children loved it for sweetness and bright colors, while adults appreciated its simplicity and make-ahead convenience. Though nutritionally questionable and dismissed by food sophisticates, Ambrosia's nostalgic power keeps it alive at family gatherings. Sweet potato biscuits. Sweet potato biscuits brought Southern ingenuity and resourcefulness to Thanksgiving bread baskets throughout the 1800s and 1900s. These orange-hued, slightly sweet biscuits stretched wheat flour with mashed sweet potatoes, plentiful, cheap, and nutritious crops that thrived in Southern soil. They represented creative use of available ingredients and agricultural abundance, transforming simple roots into tender, flavorful quick breads that complemented savory holiday dishes. Making these biscuits combined standard biscuit technique with vegetable addition. Cooked, mashed sweet potatoes mixed into flour with baking powder, salt, and cold butter, creating orange-flecked dough enriched by the sweet potato's natural moisture and subtle sweetness. Some recipes added a touch of brown sugar or cinnamon, while others kept them savory. The dough rolled out, cut into rounds, and baked quickly at high heat, emerging golden orange with tender, fluffy interiors. These biscuits tasted mildly sweet with earthy undertones and beautiful color. They absorbed butter and gravy enthusiastically while offering slight sweetness that complemented both savory meats and sweet preserves. Sweet potato biscuits demonstrated Southern agricultural pride and cooking creativity, using what grew well locally rather than relying solely on store-bought ingredients. Though still made in some traditional Southern families, they've largely yielded to standard white flour biscuits or commercial rolls. Mock duck. Mock duck exemplified Depression-era creativity when real duck was unaffordable luxury, but cooks still wanted impressive centerpieces. This ingenious recipe transformed inexpensive beef round or pork shoulder into something resembling duck through careful butchering, stuffing, and roasting techniques. It appeared in community cookbooks and women's magazines throughout the 1930s and 1940s, helping families maintain holiday dignity despite economic hardship. The transformation process was theatrical. A beef or pork roast was butterflied flat, pounded thin, then spread with sage-flavored bread, stuffing similar to poultry dressing. The meat rolled tightly around the stuffing, secured with kitchen string to create an elongated shape roughly resembling a duck body. Some cooks inserted wooden skewers at one end to mimic a neck. The duck roasted slowly, basted frequently until browned and tender, then sliced to reveal stuffing spirals. Mock duck satisfied psychological and practical needs. It provided festive centerpiece presentation without duck's expense, while the stuffing extended the meat further. The combination of meat and bread dressing in every slice offered familiar Thanksgiving flavors in convenient form. Though obviously not duck to anyone who tasted real poultry, it represented making do with dignity and refusing to let poverty diminish holiday celebrations. Rice pudding. Rice pudding arrived at Thanksgiving tables bringing simple, comforting sweetness as old as colonial America itself. This humble dessert combined pantry staples, rice, milk, sugar, and eggs into creamy, gently spiced custard that required more patience than skill. From the 1700s through the mid-1900s, it appeared at holiday meals as economical, crowd-pleasing dessert that satisfied without expensive ingredients or elaborate preparation. The slow cooking method created its characteristic creaminess. Short grain rice simmered in milk with sugar until the grains swelled and softened, absorbing liquid and releasing starch that thickened everything into pudding consistency. Beaten eggs stirred in at the end created custard richness, while vanilla, cinnamon, or nutmeg added warmth. Some cooks included raisins or lemon zest. The pudding could be served warm or cold, plain or topped with cream or fruit. Rice pudding tasted of childhood comfort and kitchen economy. It was mild, sweet, and soothing, a gentle ending after heavy turkey dinners. The texture ranged from loose and creamy to thick and spoonable depending on cooking time and rice amount. Though rice pudding remains popular in some cultures and regions, it rarely appears at modern Thanksgiving celebrations, replaced by flashier pies and cakes that overshadow this modest classic. Giblet gravy. Giblet gravy represented ultimate waste not cooking, transforming turkey organs and neck into rich, complex gravy that defined Thanksgiving dinner for generations. Before modern sanitized eating, no self-respecting cook discarded the giblets, heart, liver, gizzard, and neck that came tucked inside turkeys. These nutrient-dense parts simmered into deeply flavored stock that became gravy base, with the chopped cooked organs adding texture and intensity. The preparation started hours before dinner. Giblets and neck simmered in water with onion, celery, and herbs, creating concentrated broth while the organs cooked tender. The liver was removed early to prevent bitterness, while the heart and gizzard needed longer. After simmering, the organs were finely chopped. Turkey pan drippings were deglazed with giblet broth, thickened with flour or cornstarch roux, and the chopped organs stirred back in, creating deeply savory gravy with interesting texture. Giblet gravy tasted authentic and primal in ways smooth gravies never could. The organs added mineral, meaty intensity and slight textural contrast, tiny tender bits throughout silky sauce. It represented complete animal utilization and old-world thriftiness. Modern squeamishness about organs and convenience gravy packets have nearly eliminated this traditional accompaniment, though some families maintain the practice religiously.